Well, thanks, Julian. I have to admit the last 3 days that I'm here in London was probably the best times as a speaker. And to be honest, the first time I've been in Angular Connect was 2017. I met one of my best friends, Shai. I saw Kara Eriksson on stage. I have a slide on that, but I'm maybe doing it before. And Angular Connect for me was the first time I decided that I want to be on stage. I remember Kara Eriksson talking about forms. By the way, forms was also a main topic there. And I'm super excited to be here today with you and be part of the organization team. And today, in my talk, I'm going to talk about the magic behind the resource API. I know that most of you already knows what resources are and probably also using them already in production, even though they are still experimental. But on the other hand, I'm meeting so many people that missing one of the key features inside the resource API itself. By the way, I have water. Yeah. Let me improvise also pulling water for myself. Cool. Yeah, full hydration. Cool. So a word about myself. I'm a CEO of a company named D-Square. I'm a Google developer expert for Angular web technologies and main organizer of two of the biggest conferences, I hope, in the Angular community, Angular TLV, and of course Angular Connect, which we willing not to stop this year and continue as a new tradition and bring it back to life. D-Square, a consulting firm, specialized mainly in Angular. We're doing phone consulting, staff augmentation, trainings, workshops, whatever needed. If you considering some of those services, catch me after the break. We can talk about it. I already mentioned my story and Angular Connect. Mentioned Shai. Where's Shai? You better wait for Shai's talk. I mean, the end of the day, it's always fun. So, what's the agenda for today? I'm going to talk about a little bit the Angular reactivity journey, what are resources, explain the resource API, talk about streaming resource, how we can solve most of the common problems of our times with streaming resource, and of course, a lot of demos and live coding. Signals are everywhere. I think the last 3 years, the Angular team was mainly focused on moving into the reactivity phase, enabling zoneless change detection, and bringing it into a stable. But in and most of the APIs, by the way, of Angular already transformed into signals, input, outputs, queries. We heard about forms. We know that the router is about to get transferred into signals, and of course HTTP resource. But reactivity can be just synchronous, and while most of the APIs are synchronous, signals, computed inputs, etc., real-life applications most of the time use asynchronous data. And for that, the Angular team invented the resource. And resource is mainly a synchronous dependency that also giving you sort of state managed. And if I try to build a resource myself, it's probably going to be an effect that wrapping an async task, but also exposing a state with pending value the error itself. It also supports cancellation with a board signal that we're going to see in a second. And of course, it's integrated well with the entire Angular activity system. So the resource API have a value, status, error, and is loading state. And with that, how much time did I spend already? 5 minutes? I have no more slides. So, yeah, whoever knows me knows that I prefer not to work on slides, but prefer to work on code together with you. So what we're going to do in the next 25 minutes is to see 3 different examples of using resources. One of them will be the basic one, okay? So pre-made an application that most of the boring stuff are already implemented. We're going to just implement together the resource implementations. So I will start with a simple application where, let's say I have a list of users, and every time I'm clicking a different user, I want to see a list of his posts. I'm, of course, using the JSON API placeholder, JSON placeholder API, sorry. Zoom? It's not big enough? I'm going to be blind. Cool. Let's say that I want to show a list of users that's coming from this user's API. So of course we can use the resource as is and just take the loader, fetch this API, user's API, thanks AI, and return the response JSON. Okay. Now going to our resource demo, let's enable this and just use the resource value. Of course, all of them are signals. And we see a list of users, which is kind of the most basic use case for using a resource. But resource also can have params. So let's say that every time I'm clicking a user, I will implement a select function that passing the item. And item will be of type user. Let's quickly create selected user, which will be a signal of a user or undefined, and initiate it to undefined. And here, just a selected user set to our item. And with that, if we have a signal that is updating every time that we're clicking the user, we can, of course, create a new resource for the post with a param that every time this param will change, it will automatically trigger another request. So we want to use the selected user, and every time the selected user is changing, let's set the loader. We can take the params, rename it to be selected user, and initiate again a fetch request to post API. Let's just add user ID equal to selected user ID. No need for that, just return the rest JSON. And now, on the other side of the screen, we can, thanks Shai, the post value once again. Cool. And whenever I'm clicking a user, nothing happened. Why? Yeah, of course. Yeah, so whenever I'm clicking a user, I'm getting the post relevant to that exact user. This is probably the most basic use case of using resources. But let's see something even more clever and more complex than that. Now, I have a 5-year-old kid, and I'm teaching him, we're playing the buzz game. In Israel, we're calling it 7 boom or 5 boom. Every time you're getting into a count of 5 or 10, you, instead of saying the number, you're saying boom, okay? So let's implement this all together with a timer resource. So I'm exporting a function called a timer resource. Timer resource will get the interval, which is the counter for us. It will be of type number. And I want to return a resource ref of number or string, string or a undefined. The reason I need undefined is because I'm going to do it with streaming resource. Now, I immediately returning a resource, and I'm implementing an async function inside the stream where I basically, first of all, creating my stream item. Every time I want to create a stream resource, I'm creating, first of all, the streamed item that I'm going to return, which is going to be of type, it's a signal of a special type that the Angular team created for us called resource stream item, which is also a generic type. In our case, it will be a number number or a string, and the type of the resource stream item is either a value or an error. In our case, I want to return a value which initiated with the number 0. In the end of the stream function, I want to return a stream item. And now in between, I'm going to implement the streaming implementation. In our case, we just want to probably set an interval and pass the interval number. Before that, maybe let's set a counter. Our counter will be a 0, and we can increment the counter every time we're getting into the interval. Now to check if counter modulo, let's say 5, is different than 0, I can return value. Sorry. Yeah, I want to take the stream item and set it with a value of the counter, and otherwise set the value to buzz. Okay? Let's play this game together. So again, the boring part that already was implemented, let's just mark it. Timer resource. How we call it? Timer resource. Cool. And in the timer page, we can see 1, 2, you want to count with me? 4, buzz, 6, and it actually works. But there is a slightly problem with this approach, because nobody's cleaning the interval, and streaming resources are staying with us. The way to maybe explain it and show you the best will be just adding a log statement of the counter itself, and we can see, I will increase also my console side. So you can see in the console that the timer is ticking, but let's say I'm gonna just go to another page, you see that the timer is still alive, right? If I go again to the timer page, you see now we have 2 instances. And this is basically how we're all doing memory leaks. Yeah! Alex clapped. So, what's the best way to deal with that? So, streaming resources also export something called an abort signal. Okay? And with abort signal, this is exactly the place where you should handle your cancellation functionality. And with the abort signal, you can just add an event listener that's called abort, and here, inside of it, to implement the, let's save our interval, and here, exactly, we have to just clear the interval of the ref itself. Cool, and we can see that even now we are in the timer. Let's move to another page. The timer is cleared. Okay, cool. So honestly, this is a great example to maybe teaching the streaming resource API. But to be honest, it's pretty much basic. Now, with streaming, we can do some powerful stuff. And one of them is probably solving one of the most, I would say, use cases of our common time. Somebody have a guess? What we can do with resources that we're seeing almost everywhere these days? Chat! Exactly. So apparently, those chat APIs, right, they are streaming the response. Every time, and on my computer, I have a local Ollama. I'm using Ollama. And the model itself is Gemini, Gemini Mini, Gemini 3 1B, if it's really important to anybody. And whenever I'm sending a request, and here my request, you can see the request is an array of messages. I hope you can see it. Array of messages where the role user, I'm the user, and I'm sending a question, what is the capital of France? You can see that I'm getting a response from the server, which is kind of stream-based, okay? It can, of course, work with WebSockets, but also with REST APIs, you can kind of simulate the streaming needs and the way of how LLM builds the response for you. And this is exactly how it works under the hood. Now, don't worry, it's not important. Where we move to the important part, I will zoom once again. Now, I've seen this in the Angular docs, which is pretty much new. And they gave an amazing example of how to create something like that from scratch. So I took it and built something based on Olama, which we're going to implement here all together. I already implemented the chat itself, where it's the boring part, once again, just the text area with a send button, okay? And let's build the chat resource, which is the most interesting part. So I have two constants, which is the Olama API and the model itself. Now let's create the function. Is it big enough? Yeah? Cool. Create chat resource. We will pass the messages. The messages will be of type signal of message. Message is the type that you just saw with the role and the content itself. Message array. And we're expecting to return a resource ref of message array or undefined, once again, because we're going to stream the response. Immediately returning a resource where now we need the params because the messages can change. I'm checking if I have messages, if it's the length is more than 0. So I'm returning the messages itself, and otherwise I will return undefined. Now, thank you, Shai. I'm blind already. Again, an async function. Now the pattern is, again, I'm creating the stream item. Stream item will be, again, a signal of resource stream item. In our case, of message array. And I can just initiate the value to come from the params that we just set. Let's change the name to messages. Messages. Cool. So we have the stream item. We know that in the end, we will need to return the stream item. So I'm returning the stream item immediately. In between, let's do the fetch API. So the API is coming from the Olama API, right? /API/chat. And I need to set the method to be a post method. Thanks, AI. Headers, content type application JSON, amazing. The body will be just a JSON stringify of messages. And the model, I have another const model, that name model. Cool. Which is the Gemini, Gemma 3.1b. Cool. I have the fetch request. Now, every time I'm getting the fetch request, I want to run an async res function, checking, first of all, if I have res. If I don't have a res body, I can return immediately. And otherwise, I want, first of all, to create a text recorder because the response is encoded. So text decoder equal a new text decoder. And now I can iterate on each response from the res body, meaning I'm going to iterate over each message, decode it, parse it, and show exactly what I have. So for await const chunk of res.body. And inside, let's just, first of all, we want to decode the message. Decoded chunk will be a text decoder.decode of the chunk. Let's parse it. So parse chunk will be a JSON parse of the decoded chunk. And here, because we're losing the type, I have to kind of cast it into a message. And here I can just use the message out of the parse chunk. Let's log the message to see what we got. And of course, before that, let's enable everything that's marked here. This is again the boring part. Cool. Now I'm asking a question. What is this capital city of France? Let's see what we got here. So you see that the role is now assistant. Now this is the way I'm getting the response. The capital city of France is Paris. Exactly like LLMs works, right? Now let's build the response in a way, the stream item, we will build the response incrementally. The way every time I'm getting one of the responses, I'm going to show it incrementally on the page. Exactly like it's in most of the common chats. So let's take the stream item and update. We're getting the previous value. With the previous value, we're checking if the previous value has something that's called value. If not, if it's a not, we can return immediately to the stream item an error, which is going to be a new error, I don't know, no value. Good error. And otherwise, I want to get the last message. I can just get the last message from the pre-value length -1. Check if the last message was coming from the user, so role equal to user. If it's coming from the user side, I just want to add the message directly, because we don't need to build it step by step. So we're returning a value to the stream API, to the stream item, sorry. The value will be just the prev value and the message itself. Otherwise, we need to kind of build it incrementally. So it will be a value, of course, because we're returning the resource stream item type. I'm returning an array where I'm slicing the value, but I'm concatenating the last one. I'm removing the last message. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm kind of adjusting the last message. I'm creating the last message, but changing the content to be the last message content plus the current message content. I hope you bear with me. Let's see what's happening right now. The capital city of France is Paris. Let's say, tell me more about it. Now, you see it happening really, really fast. We can kind of control it. And let's say that every time we're iterating over a message, let's just add an await, new promise, and let's say, let's change it to 200 milliseconds. And maybe now the behavior will be more smoother. The capital city of France is Paris. It's often referred to as the city of light, blah, blah, blah. But we got a chatbot that we just created from scratch. Woo! Again, tell me more about it. The amazing thing, it remembers, of course, the context and building the chat on your screen, step by step, as you can see. I think this is one of the most common, I mean, one of the sexiest things that are happening right now in the world with all the AI and LLM stuff. And a great example how you can use the resource stream API to create something like that so easily. I believe not a lot of people was aware about the streaming option in the resource API. Hope that now you know. And that's it. keep in touch. Of course, Twitter, Gmail, whatever. I will post my slides and especially the repository, the link to the repository on GitHub, so you can have another look of the code. And thanks a lot once again.